Hello, fourth graders. Welcome to chapters 17 and 18 of Maniac Magee. At the end of the last chapter, Maniac wasn't realizing that the people around him didn't like him and he didn't notice it, but then he could. So we'll find out what that means for chapter 17. It was a hot day in August. It was so hot, if you stood still too long in the vacant lot, the sun bouncing off a chunk of broken glass or metal could fry a patch on your hide. So hot, if you were packing candy, you had soup in your pocket by 2 o'clock. So hot, the dogs were tripping on their own tongues. And so hot that the fire hydrant at Green and Chestnut was gushing like Niagara Falls, courtesy of somebody wrenching off the cap. By the time Maniac and the rest of the vacant lot regulars got there, Chestnut and Green was a cross between a block party and a swimming pool. Radios blaring, people blaring, somebody selling lemonade, somebody selling Kool-Aid ice cubes on toothpicks, bodies, skin, colors, water, gleaming, buttery, warm, cool, wet, screaming, happy. The younger you were, the fewer clothes you had on. Grown-ups sat on the sidewalk and dangled their bare feet in the running gutters. Teachers stripped down to bathing suits and cutoffs. Little kids, underwear. Littlest kids, nothing. Maniac danced and pranced and screamed with the rest. He learned how to jump in front of the gusher and let it propel him halfway across the street. He joined in a snake dance. He got goofy. He drenched himself in all the wet and warm and happy. When he first heard the voice, he didn't think much of it. Just one voice in hundreds. But then the other voices were falling away, in bunches, until only this one was left. It was a strange voice, deep and thick and sort of clotted, as though it had to fight its way through a can of worms before coming out. The voice was behind him, saying the same word over and over, calling a name. And even then, Maniac turned only because he was curious, wondering what everybody was staring at. But when he saw the brown finger pointed at him, not a speck of icing on it, and the brown arm that aimed it and the brown face behind it, he knew the name coming out of the can of worm's mouth was his, Whitey. And it surprised him that he knew. He just stood there, blinking through the water-dropped sun blur, the hydrant gusher smacking his thin, bare ankles. The radios, the people, were silent. "You move on now, Whitey," the man said. "You pick up your gear and move on out. Time to go home now." The man was close enough to be catching some water around his shoes, which, Maniac noticed, were actually slippers. His pants were baggy, and his shirt wasn't really a shirt but a pajama top covered with high-tailed roosters. White hair curled around his ears. Maniac gave his answer. "I am home." The man took a step closer, dropped his arm. "You go on home now, son. Back to your own kind. I seen you at the block party. Now you get going." Maniac stepped out of the gusher. The water roared on to the opposite curb. "This is where I live. I live right down there." He pointed towards Sycamore. The man didn't seem to notice. "Never enough, is it, Whitey? Just want more and more. Won't even leave us our little water in the street. Come on down to see Bojangles. Come on to the zoo, the monkey house." He must be hard of hearing, Maniac thought. So he called it out really loud and slow and pointed again. "I live at 728 Sycamore. I do." The old man stepped closer. You got your own kind. It's how you wanted it. Let's keep it that way. Now move on. Your kind's waiting." He flung his finger westward. "Up there." Suddenly, Hester and Lester were by Maniac's side, barking at the man. "You leave him alone, old rag picker. You shut up." And the man was croaking, ranting, not to Maniac now, but to the people. What happens when we go over there? Black is black, white is white. The sheep lie not with the lion. The sheep knows his own kind. A woman was rushing in then, pulling him away up the street. Our own kind, our own kind. The water thundered across the street. Maniac, who was one of the world's great sleepers, didn't sleep well that night, or the next. He started getting up earlier than usual, not to sneak some time with the A book, just to run. Bow Wow wasn't even ready for his morning pee yet, but he went along. Usually Maniac just jogged around the East End. Now he did the whole town, plus over the river to Bridgeport. By the third day, Bow Wow refused to go along. One morning, as Maniac was heading home, Hester and Lester came running up Sycamore. Maniac, come on, we're going to run too. Let's go that way. They tried to turn him around, but he told them to just hold on a minute. He wanted to stop home for a quick drink, then he'd go running with them. They kept yelling and tugging and pushing and grabbing his legs. And then Amanda was pedaling frantically up to him, slapping on a quick smile and gasping. Hey, I'm going to the store. Want to come along? Maniac checked the sun. It was hardly up to the second stories. Stores aren't open yet, he said. Amanda just gawked. She was a rotten liar, Maniac knew. He shook loose from the little ones and trotted on. He didn't know what, but something was wrong. The little ones jabbered and screeched and grabbed. He ran faster, faster. Mrs. Beale was out front with the yellow bucket, soap suds spilling over the brim, a stiff bristle brush in her hand. She was scrubbing the house, the brick wall, scrubbing furiously at the chalk, grunting with the effort, her cheeks wet. He had been way too early, way too fast. Only the F had been scrubbed away. The rest was quite easy to read, the tall yellow letters the same color as the scrub bucket. Ishbelly, go home. Chapter 18. Amanda tried to reason with him. You can't listen to that old coot. He's goofy. He's always saying stuff like that. You can't go because of something one nutty old coot says. Maniac pointed out that it wasn't the nutty old coot who chalked up the front of the house. Amanda laughed. That? That's no big deal. It wasn't even paint. If they really meant it, they would have done it in paint. And anyway, don't you know that they did my mother a favor? It gave her a chance to get out the old bucket and do some serious scrubbing. Ever since the kids stopped craning the house, she hasn't known what to do with herself. Now she's happy again. Maniac didn't answer. Amanda didn't understand that most of the hurt he felt was not for himself, but for her and the rest of the family. She stomped her foot. You gotta stay. I don't gotta do anything. You go, you'll starve. Was I starving before I came here? You'll freeze to death in the winter. Your fingers will get so stiff they'll break off like icicles. I'll go somewhere. Somewhere? Like the deer pen? I'll be okay. Or maybe Prairie Dog Town, huh? How about that? She jabbed at him. You could live in a gopher hole. You'd be starving, so that would be perfect. Because then you'd be so skinny you could fit right down there all snugly in their little tunnels. He shrugged. Sounds cozy. This was driving Amanda bonkers. He was acting so different, all glum, and wiseacre answers, as if he didn't care, not about anything. Yeah, she sniffed. Well, what are you going to do for a pillow, huh? I know you put my pillow on the floor. I'll use a hibernating gopher. Funny. And bathroom, huh? Where will you go to the bathroom? The bushes, McDonald's, lots of places. She hated it, an answer for everything. And the scariest part was, he was probably right. If anybody could survive on the loose, it would be this kid who showed up from Hollidaysburg, who slept on floors, who outran dogs. He was making her so mad. She pointed at him. She sneered. Well, I'll tell you one thing, buddy boy. You better shut the door on your way out and lock it, because if I get my room back, I'm not giving it up again. So don't ever come crawling back around here. She kicked him in the sneaker. You hear? Don't worry, he said flatly. And don't think you're taking any of my books with you this time either. And you can forget about ever getting a chance to open my Encyclopedia A, which I was almost ready to let you do before you went and started acting all poopy. He said, I'll join the library. She jumped up. Ha! You can't. No, you need a library card. I'll get one. Ha ha! You can't get a library card without an address. She regretted it as soon as she said it. His head swung. His eyes met hers. His eyes said, Why did you say that? Her eyes couldn't answer. He got up and went out and trotted up the street. Amanda cried. She tore a magazine in half. She punched the sofa. She kicked the easy chair. She kicked Bow Wow. Bow Wow went yelping into the kitchen. See, she yelled at the front door. See what you made me do, Jeffrey Magee? Jeffrey Maniac Crazy Man Bozo Magee? He wasn't back by lunch. He wasn't back by dinner. I'm going looking, Amanda told her worried parents. No one tried to stop her. She rode her bike all over, East End, West End. She even went over to Bridgeport, practically got herself killed on the bridge. She never pedaled so much in her life. She didn't come home until after dark. When her parents headed upstairs to bed, she asked if she could stay up to watch TV. They looked at each other and said, okay. She was nodding off in the middle of some late movie when the door opened and in he walked. What are you doing up so late? He said. I'm incubating an egg, she snarled. He shrugged and went upstairs. She closed her eyes and smiled. Next morning, a little kid from 3 blocks away came knocking at the front door. His yo-yo string had a knot fat as a mushroom. As Amanda watched Maniac tackle the knot, an idea slithered into her brain. When the little kid left with his string good as new, she said, Jeffrey, if I knew some way that would make it okay for you to stay, would you? What do you mean, okay? He said. I mean, that even if there is 1 or 2 people who aren't too wild about you now, and that's all there really are, that even they would like you, and everybody else who already likes you, they'll like you even more? Purely out of curiosity, Maniac replied, How's all that supposed to happen? Amanda told him about Cobble's knot. And that's it for chapters 17 and 18. Bye.